Justin Trudeau is responsible. He's the head of government, and this is a government contract. Let's put this into perspective. This is a contract for anti-eavesdropping technology to be used by our police force that was awarded to a company whose owner is charged with 21 potential espionage crimes in the United States of America. I mean, it's almost something that you'd expect to be out of a spy novel, but characters in spy novels would never be that incompetent. So the Prime Minister has to take the responsibility for his own government rather than trying to blame everyone else all the time and explain why he put in place a system that allowed this contract to go ahead.
That, of course, is Pierre Poilievre. We'll discuss what he's talking about. Tom Mulcair is standing by. Our feature brought to you by Guaranteed Industries, who take care of all your heating needs and cooling needs, too. But for right now, give them a call. Great deals on Lennox heat pumps, just in time for the cold weather, 514-342-3400. So, Tom, the reference here is to an RCMP contract awarded to a China-linked company, as you heard Pierre Poilievre say, with already a long list of issues behind them in the U.S. What's this about?
This is, for once, Pierre Poilievre is not going over the top. This is an unbelievable situation. And yes, it goes straight to the ability of the Trudeau government to get anything done in any way that makes any sense. Think of this for a second. This is our national police force going through a contract process with a company that is essentially owned by the Chinese government. It makes no sense. And now the government is saying they're going to investigate it. I guess that means they're going to investigate themselves. Maybe they'll use some of the equipment sold to them by the Chinese Communist Party. Look, it's not funny. And how we get into this sort of situation is also interesting because in my experience, when you start seeing stuff like this drip out, leaks coming out constantly with regard to China's interference in our elections. Trudeau took on the Chinese president on this. They boasted about that. And then he said, actually, no, they haven't really been doing anything. So there's something wrong in everything that the government is doing with regard to China. And there are people who are starting to leak stuff because this doesn't come out of nowhere. I'm sure the reporters were great investigators, but somebody told them, why don't you look here? Because otherwise, how would they have seen this contract that's essentially just been something banal and on the books for a long time?
As I hear you talk about this, every time a story like this breaks where one department within the federal government does something that makes us all sit back and go, how could that possibly have happened? Mm-hmm. And It's not one department, Tom. We had someone, a declared anti-Semite a while ago, getting a government grant to work somewhere. I'm like,
yep.
How is this continuing to happen? Is it unique to this particular government? Or is this always going on? We're just finding out about it now.
No, Mr. Trudeau is a really good politician. He gets some things done really at the top level. Internationally, he's highly respected. He's one of the more senior people, even despite his relatively young age. He's one of the more seasoned people on the international circuit. He's listened to a lot. He gets a lot of things done very well. But with regard to actually managing anything, I think it might be fair to mention that Mr. Trudeau really has no management experience himself. He was never a minister before becoming prime minister, and he's never really done anything other than teach in a school, and he was in charge of something that the Liberals had put together to help young people travel. But in all seriousness, there's not much deep experience there. He's never understood that as being one of his essential roles. But when you're the prime minister, you're the first minister, you're the person in charge of running the government. And that's a point that Poilievre made in his statement. Trudeau's supposed to be managing the shop, and he's just not doing that. So things are falling apart. You can't get a passport anymore. We had the worst airports in the world as we were coming out of the pandemic. That's not an opinion. That was measured internationally. And we've got an immigration system that's completely broken. And today we have a report saying, of course, that billions and billions of dollars of taxpayers' money were given to people who didn't deserve it. During the pandemic, everybody could agree that you had to help people as quickly as possible, but then go get the money from the scofflaws, but we don't even seem to be able to know how to do that. And that's where the Liberal government is falling down, just in terms of pure competency, ability to manage to get things done.
I feel like, you always hear this idea, well, if you can't do it yourself, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you
Sure.
or who have the skill set that you don't. And it seems to me that since the very beginning here, Trudeau has not had the people he needed surrounding him. But you would think this point he would have learned that.
He had the people he needed surrounding him to do what Justin Trudeau considered to be a priority,
Yes.
which was his image, how people thought of him. the color of his socks. And I'm saying that with a smile because that's actually an example. So he's had the best, like literally the Rolls Royce of political communications people. He's had the absolute best. Katie Telford, in my view, one of the best political operatives in a generation. She's been his chief of staff the whole time. So he's got outstanding people. But what's their mission? What have they been asked to do? They're not running the government very well, but they're doing a pretty darn good job of putting Mr. Trudeau out there, giving him his lines. He does a very good job of delivering them. But every once in a while, people go, but is anybody actually running the government? And unfortunately, it's more and more clear that really they're not doing a good job of running the government.
Well, especially if we're not going to recoup this $27.4 billion, Tom.
Yeah, and everybody can agree that you had to have as few barriers as possible to let the money flow.
Sure.
But then you go after it. The Americans are very good at this. They don't fool around. And by the way, they have real penalties. Here, what are we hearing? Oh, come on, don't be so tough. Oh, well, you know. And there were some who were out there on the public space saying, oh, no, let them off the hook. No. If somebody took money from the government that they knew they weren't entitled to, don't let them off the hook.
I will say, if you had listened to our call-in segment, we had a lot of hanging judges here saying exactly what you just said. They were not giving them a lot of breaks if you ripped off the government or your own taxpayer money. But,
well, because so many people were honest about it, and so many people did. I know people who were actually eligible, and they said, well, no, I'm okay. I've got money in the bank. I don't need to do this. I won't go get that money. I'll leave it for somebody else who needs it more. But to find out later that you were entitled to it, you didn't take it because you're a good citizen and figured you could do without, and then that other people were just filling their pockets with government money. No. They better be able to prove they've done everything they can to go get that money back.
Now, I remember you mentioned this, I think, a couple of years ago when we talked, and I said when you were still in government, you remember there's always this issue of when you kind of make things available to people in the country, you factor in, what was it, 2% will just head out the door?
Like 0.2%.
0.2%.
But what we wound up here, the real number that we've got of money that we know was taken illegally is $4.6 billion. The 20-something billion is
suspicious.
What the Auditor General is saying she's suspicious about. But we know that there's $4.6 billion, which works out to about 2% of the program. So they went from they're saying, okay, we're going to take a gamble. We're going to open this thing up more. We know there will be more fraud. But I think that was a good judgment call, because they're saying hundreds of thousands, millions of Canadians lost their jobs overnight. Actual statistic, the average Canadian family, no more than 2 weeks' pay in the bank. And so you had to come to people's aid, and they did the right thing, I believe, on that. But now that they know that there's been fraud on that level, hey, this is not chump change. $4.6 billion is a lot of money that could go to a lot of very good, useful purposes in our society. Go get that money. It's not theirs. It's taxpayers' money.
Last thing I want to ask you about, we're not going to waste a lot of time talking about Danielle Smith, but you think she may have perhaps what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, didn't quite read the room, or the entire room anyway, with this Sovereignty Act that she wants to introduce.
It's really backfired on her. She thought that she would have the whole business community on side. The chambers of commerce, the oil companies are saying, please, we're looking for massive investments. We don't need to look like a banana republic. And that's the thing with Danielle Smith. By the way, people are saying terrible personal things about her. She's no dummy. But she just doesn't understand the first thing about political communication. You can go a little bit over the top, but then you've got to be able to reel it back, and you've got to be able to back up what you're saying. Her big thing, her big introduction, you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. Her first impression was, here's my Sovereignty Act. 3 days later, they had to withdraw it and say, we're going to rewrite it because it's not clear at all. If that's the level of work you think you're going to do to run the government of one of Canada's largest and certainly most important provinces, good luck. In the background, you've got people like Rachel Notley in the NDP. She's already done a full 4 years in power. She's been very reserved. Why has she been holding her punches? Because there's an old expression, when your adversary's busy beating themselves up, don't do anything to intervene. And that's what she's doing. And you've got the same thing from Trudeau and Dominic LeBlanc saying, no, it's okay. We're not getting into a fight with Alberta. That's what Danielle Smith was hoping to have, a fight pushed back from the feds. They're not going to give her that pleasure.
Tom Mulcair, back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at about 7:40. Thank you, Tom.
Take good care.